We're more predetermined than we would like to think. We're constantly pushed around by memory, by experience, by our own narratives that we create, by our heritage, by nature repeats itself. So we're going back generations and generations. Then genetics is chaos theory. There are all these things that are directing our behavior that we don't really know, but most of it's happening below our awareness and without our permission.
Which leads to a lot of fights.
Which leads to a lot of stupid things, right? We're incredibly brilliant in so many ways of what we can do with our minds. And we're incredibly stupid much of the time, just bumbling around, automatically being reflexive and memory-based, sometimes 99% of the day. And so we're making errors continually with communication, with perception, with memory is terrible. We fight over these three things unnecessarily because we have to be right. But none of those things are correct. We're mostly misunderstanding each other most of the time. So all of this is about, three-legged race, moving together or we don't move. That is how teams are played. That is how this is played.
This is the Gifts of Trauma podcast. Stories of transformation and healing through compassionate inquiry. Welcome to the Gifts of Trauma podcast by Compassionate Inquiry. I'm Rosemary Davies-Janes, and this new episode of our Relating series, I am delighted to welcome both my CI colleague and co-host, Leila Bahri-Lucas, and our guest, Dr. Stan Tatkin. Now, in previous episodes in this series, we've explored compulsive sexuality and polyamory, and today we will delve into a relating option that many of our listeners will be much more familiar with, monogamy and marriage. Stan, welcome to the Gifts of Trauma podcast, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. I'd like to introduce you by sharing some highlights from your bio, which is included in full in the show notes. Stan, you're a clinician, an author, a researcher. You are the developer of, do we say PACT or PACT?
PACT is fine.
PACT, okay. And the co-founder of the PACT Institute. You were an assistant clinical professor at UCLA, at David Geffen School of Medicine, and you maintain a private practice in Southern California, and you lead PACT programs both in the US and internationally. And you're the author of 8 books, I think.
Not that.
I counted them. And all of those books are listed in the show notes. And we'll be talking about some of those later. So, Stan, what would you like our listeners to know about you that's not included in your bio? Who are you?
Oh, I was a musician. I grew up in a show business family, so I recorded a lot. I was a drummer until I was about 26, and then I quit music.
That's an unusual story. Normally, musicians don't quit music. So is there no little rhythm that stayed with you?
I got to do a lot of things. I feel very fortunate, and I burned out early. So I started very young, and a lot of events were going on at the time that caused me to get out. And then I wandered around a bit and started to do acting and writing and directing. And then I went back into music shortly and then into this field and never looked back.
Wonderful story. Thank you for sharing. Now I'd like to introduce my co-host and Compassionate Inquiry colleague, Leila Bahri-Lucas. And Leila is a certified compassionate inquiry practitioner and a relational life therapy counselor. Leila supports couples through difficult moments. She has a specialty in infertility, blended families, and the many challenges of family building. She brings CI depth into the couple space together with the full relational framework that she trained in through Terry Reel's RLT. Leila, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Rosemary, and with Stan.
Leila, I understand you've been following Stan's work for some time. Can you share a little bit of that history?
I think it was in 2012 that I read your book, Wired for Love. And I recently rediscovered it on my bookshelf, opened it up, and realized that I had underlined every page in a different color. I think at the time when I read it, it was like a light bulb. Wow. I could completely basically resonate with everything that you said. One of the reasons I was interested in co-hosting today is because I feel that so many people feel alone in their relationship struggles. And Stan, you have this way of normalizing how hard relationships can be, reminding people they're not defective, but basically that we're just human. And in my own work with couples, I see how comforting that is. So joining this conversation today is really meaningful to me. Thank you.
Thank you. It's in the second edition, by the way. I was able to go back and update a lot. So you'll probably some of that today.
That's good to know, because when I was researching, I saw the first edition was 2012 and the second edition's just last year, 2024. So does that mean Leila needs to go buy a new set of highlighters?
Or just listen to it. It's me reading the book. So
Oh, even better. Even better.
I like that.
Yeah. In addition to all of the wonderful people we have here, this is going to be a very interesting episode as it's scheduled to release on December 25th. So I have a feeling it will be a true gift to all of our listeners who struggle with monogamy at times. And I've been there and I know the struggle. And Leila and Stan, you must both see this playing out with the couples that you work with.
yes, absolutely. Monogamy is not, we're not wired exactly to be monogamous, anything but it's a choice, right? It's a decision that two people or more make. But there better be a good reason for making that choice, because when you make a choice, you lose the things that you are not going to do. And you better have a good reason, a personal value, a personal stake in it having nothing to do with the other person. A lot of people have a hard time defending their choices if they have to do it without using the other person.
Yeah, very true. Very true. And at this time of year, as we come into the holidays, that adds more pressure. Would you like to speak to that a little bit? How people experiencing that pressure, family pressure on their marriage, can get through the holidays with more joy, more of the joy that we're looking for?
What I really recommend couples always do is PEPPER. We use PEPPER to mean predict, plan, prepare, and revise or repair as needed. In other words, you're going to point to having a great holiday together. And now you predict what could possibly interfere with it, what could go wrong. And you plan by taking everything that could go wrong first with the two of you off the table. If this happens, we do this. If that happens, we do that. And then you now think about other people. Who else could ruin our time? How do we deal with them without harming them? So we have a plan going in, and we prepare just before walking in the door. If everybody did this, they would have a better time with pretty much everything.
Yeah, that sounds like a great plan. So thank you. And Leila, would you like to comment on that? Because you're face to face with these people going through these struggles as well.
Yeah, I very much like what you said, Stan, about plan. Not all of us have time to plan. But yeah, the thing that comes to mind when you say this, Stan, is around what if things don't go to plan? I think you mentioned repair. Did you mention repair?
If you or I make a mistake, we're ready to repair it immediately.
If I may add another question onto that, what does real repair look like to you, Stan? Because many people understand repair as in saying sorry or just moving on, but what does real repair look like?
Real repair looks like falling on your sword without saying anything other than that. I am really sorry. That was not cool. I shouldn't have done that. And you have every reason to be upset with me. Again, I'm very sorry. So that's full stop. No, let me explain, or I'm sorry you saw it that way, or I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't done this, or I think you took it the wrong way, or anything like that. I feel terrible. If I hurt you, people usually don't care when they're hurt what the person who did it feels like. Right. And it's a discipline of doing that correctly without adding anything else that would take it away. The second most important thing is if it repeats, that the two-person job makes sure that it cannot happen again with either partner. Right. Neither of us should be able to do that again. That second part, again, requires thinking in terms of prevention, learning. And You said it. Most people don't have the time, won't use the time to predict, plan, and prepare, which is available to all of us. And it does change everything when you do it. And also, people don't learn from their mistakes by putting something in that would prevent either of them from making those mistakes or to do harm again. That's like a post-mortem that we do it at the hospital, right? And only couples don't really do this. Only couples don't do a lot of the things that other unions in a free and fair voluntary alliance would never do. Go into it without a shared purpose, a shared sense of who are we and why are we and where are we going? Most couples don't do that. And so this is one of the reasons why love relationships don't last. And if they do, they're not happy or safe and secure because of those two reasons.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So basically, you're saying married couples tend to treat their marriage very casually. They're flying by the seat of their pants, basically, and just acting and reacting. And it's funny because as humans, we overthink a lot of things, but it seems like we underthink our relationships in a marriage.
Well, if you think about it, relationship doesn't exist in the physical world. It's an invention, like most things that we've created, invention in our minds, and then we manifest it. So a love relationship has to be designed by the two designers. These are design issues, but they don't design their relationship. They don't define their role. Do we share power and authority and responsibility? Or is it a general and a soldier? Is it a driver and a passenger? Or are we both drivers? And then what comes at the very top? Is it the relationship? Is it our kids? Is it ourselves? Is it our careers? God, what? But they have to agree. It can be anything they want since they're the architects. They just have to do that declaratively, not tacitly, and they have to agree and be honest about it. Otherwise, it won't work.
Yeah, thank you for that. I found a couple of quotes. One is yours, one is from Gabor Mate, and they're different words, but I think they say the same thing. I'd like to share those with you. Gabor says in his book, Scattered Minds, couples choose each other with an unerring instinct for finding the very person who will exactly match their own level of unconscious anxieties and mirror their own dysfunctions, and who will trigger for them all their unresolved emotional pain.
Pretty fancy.
Yeah, it's an observation. But what you offered is a little bit more than just an observation. There's hope attached to it. There are next steps. Because what you said is, and I love this, when we recite our relationship vows, perhaps we should say, I take you as my pain in the rear with all your history and baggage, and I take responsibility for all prior injustices you endured at the hands of those I never knew, because you are now in my care. And that's from Wired for Love, your book that we were talking about earlier. You also said, and I love this too, there's no perfect partner. What makes a partner right for you is a shared willingness to create a secure relationship. If you're both willing to go all in together, you are perfect for each other. So I wonder if you'd like to comment.
Perfectly imperfect. Good enough is perfect. And we're all disappointing. Disappointment is in our heads, right? We all have minds that compare and contrast, which is a feature in hunting and gathering, a bug in happiness. And we all have minds that are always aware of what we don't have and what is missing. That's a feature, again, for survival. It's a bug when it comes to happiness. And so our minds are really the big problem here in the human condition. The human condition writ large. We're very good, very nice when we're happy. You may not want to be around us when we're unhappy. We are, by nature, warlike creatures that are selfish and self-centered, moody and fickle, opportunistic, xenophobic, we otherize very quickly, easily influenced by groups, and exploitive. What could go wrong? I usually say if you're a human primate, you're an asshole somewhere, and by somebody's account. And so the problem is that we don't plan for our devils in marriage. And devils we are if we're under enough stress and distress. And that's not because we're bad. It's because we have an always-on survival instinct that is constantly sweeping for threat. And love relationships will provide that, if nothing else, by accident. And then we start to build memory, threat memory, which then begins to accrue if people don't watch them.
So I was thinking about When couples are under a lot of pressure,
Yeah.
and Stan, in my case, I work with a lot of couples going through infertility,
Oh, that's hard.
parenting, blending families, you name it. They often start misreading each other's tone or intention. So what actually helps partners slow down and see each other more clearly in those moments?
Two different questions.
Yes.
Tone, prosody, one of the reasons that tone gets on our nerves eventually is because the auditory cortex is proximal to the amygdala. And so it's the first trigger of trauma, first trigger of alarm. And voices, sounds are going to do that. However, it's an illusion. These are one of the things we start to understand about our minds, that many times there are false flags. And in fact, most of the time. And we're misled by fear. We're misled by, again, survival instinct. And so it must be overridden.
Basically,
There are lots we have to override if we know what's good for us. Otherwise, we'll follow every impulse. And again, we'll be threatening if we do that. So yeah, it's common, but you can build in guardrails. I give you permission next time I start to talk in an elevated voice or use that tone, I give you permission to say, stop it. And I'll know exactly what you mean. And I pledge now, I will cooperate immediately and I'll change my tone. How's that? That will work because I can't know when I'm doing it, but you can. And that would then tree me out of it if that is going to happen at all. But at least it prevents me from doing that because it offends your sensibilities, which is secure functioning, as I have to take that seriously. One person's yell is another person's whisper. We're all different animals. I have to work with the animal I chose. You're different from me.
It sounds almost like the biggest threat for us humans is almost the otherness.
Oh yeah, we otherwise like that. As Yuval Harari says, anyone who's too familiar to ignore but too different to live with, we want to get rid of. That could be our kid. That could be our partner. That could be our neighbor. We do that easily. In social media, you see it all over the place. There's otherizing constantly. There's co-opting psychological, psychiatric, medical terms to use as a cudgel to beat men and women up. It's really nasty. And so that's what we do. And that's one of the things we always have to build in, either to our culture norms, to our laws, to keep us from doing what we tend to do. And that is, we tend to be racist. We tend to be otherizing. We tend to be all of that. And that's everybody, me included. Anything other than that is denial. That's how we've always been. And so that's one of the things we have to really watch out for. Part of our devils. Hard to do, but necessary to hold on to the relationships we covet.
I'm going to jump in here quickly and just share that my daughter got married on Friday, just this past Friday.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. I know what she's getting. She and my son-in-law, they're going to get some of your books as Christmas gifts because I think that's really important. And the one I saw when I was researching was Baby Bomb.
Baby bomb is for the first baby.
Yeah, I experienced that when I had my first baby, and I thought I was prepared because I was a stepmom for, 9 years before I got pregnant with a child of our own. I thought, okay, I've been a practice mom. I know how to do this. But what I didn't account for was the impact having a baby on my husband at the time, who had been my number one priority up until then, and he couldn't handle being number two.
Choose from threes. When we go from dyads to triads, there's often trouble in the attic system. So yeah, he's no longer number one, but he is, if he understands his role, and his role is to support you, who is supporting the baby, because your attention has to be on the infant.
Exactly. Yes. So that's another one that I'm going to get that one for myself because it would be nice to have an explanation like very much after the fact, but it's always, and I know what happened from my other work, but I'd love to read your words on it.
Yeah, it's natural and it's common and it's something to actually predict and prepare for.
Yeah, it was a struggle. It was an ongoing struggle, and we split up by the time our child was 4 because it was just every day. It was like ongoing and it wouldn't quit. And I didn't have the tools you and Leila have just been discussing of knowing how to handle this. It was just exhausting. And I'm wondering, Leila, does this ever happen when you work with a couple who are on the infertility journey. They finally get pregnant, the baby is born, and then after all that stress and anxiety of the infertility route, the arrival of the baby damages the dyad of the couple.
Yes, of course, it happens actually more often than you think, because the journey of infertility doesn't necessarily end for the couple when the baby arrives. There is a lot that we carry forward from however many years pre-baby. So I always say that however we come into the journey, into the infertility journey as a couple, steady, solid, or volatile is how we are going to move through that journey. And the arrival of the baby, as we all know, it's a lot of stress. It's a lot of joy, but it's also a lot of stress on the couple. So it doesn't automatically make everything all of a sudden warm and cozy. If anything, there's a lot of residue for many couples from that kind of journey. And my husband and I, we luckily were able to go through couples therapy during most of the years during our infertility journey, which really helped us tremendously, literally to survive it and then to thrive. But couples therapy was the way to go for us.
By the way, that's another example where deliberate design comes in, because if the relationship, if they haven't set up shop for baby, right, they're going to run into trouble. And again, why don't we do this? Why do we not do what's necessary to prevent troubles that we can actually predict will happen? Because of energy conservation. Energy conservation is a biological law that tells us to do the least amount necessary, right?
We're kind of winging it.
But yeah, who has time for this? I got to go to work. And yet it is crazy when you think about what happens when people don't design it. And the load bearing increases. There are natural couples that are very good at this until load bearing increases. And then the wheels come off because they're unprepared. They have no structure. They have no agreements. They have no ways of protecting each other from each other. And again, in no other world where people are interdependent would they ever do that. Only couples. And again, this is energy conservation. This is worldwide. This is species-wide.
Yeah.
Literally do the least amount necessary, which is why after we automate each other in love relationships, we drop our formalities and act as if we're relatives, family. We're not. We stop courting. Why do it? I got the gig. We stop being present and attentive because we're on to new novelty. There's nothing new here. We stop looking at the other person's face. I don't know if you know this. We store an image of our partner's face for weeks and months without really looking at it. And so all of these things by nature that are directing us to go to sleep, to do the least amount, is what will lead to taking for granted, being unhappy, not really being present, and losing that loving feeling, because behavior wags the tail of feelings. And that's why there are these forces that are there all the time that interfere with our relationships, and we have to know about.
Yeah. I'd be very interested to speak about the PACT training.
Oh,
I know Leila has a story. Leila, actually, why don't you go ahead and share your story with Stan?
When I was looking at different trainings years ago, couples therapy trainings, I briefly looked at the Gotham training. There was a relational life therapy. There was I think it's called the developmental model by Ellen.
that's Ellen. One of our actually closest friends, Ellen and Pete. Yeah.
And then there was also PACT. And I think yours, maybe that's changed now, Stan, but I think yours is only open to licensed and pre-licensed therapists.
That's for accreditation.
Oh, that's for accreditation. Because Rosemary and I, we were talking about the fact that a lot of modalities, IFS, also compassion inquiry, there's a few others.
Yeah, Thomas Hubel's work, Timeless Wisdom Training. It seems that there's a trend that trainings that were previously only open to clinicians are now opening to counselors and coaches, and just spreading the word, like giving people the tools at different levels to what were available before. And I was wondering if PACT is open to those types of people as well.
We started that way.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it started that way, even though it was aimed at mental health professionals. So we want to do a program for coaches, for mediators, for educators, but we're a small unit, we're a small organization, and we lack the people power, which we're now building as we grow our faculty. And that's always been the problem, is resources. We just don't have the funds to get these programs quickly off the ground. We have to go step by step. That's just the nature of doing training programs. And things are not like they used to be. So it's not for not wanting to do this. It is actually because we need people to be able to make those programs work. So they're in
that
the
makes
work.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good news. Stan, who will benefit most from PACT training? What is it that you offer that will appeal to certain types of people?
It's science-based. It's neurobiology, attachment theory, but also we focus a lot on the autonomic nervous system, which is the big issue. That's sub-psychological. That's happening at lightning speed. In fact, most everything that we do live is happening at lightning speed, and there's no way to know what we're doing at any given time because it's faster than thought. These are subcortical processes that are driving us every day. We're more predetermined than we would like to think. We're constantly pushed around by memory, by experience, by our own narratives that we create, by our heritage, by nature repeats itself. So we're going back generations and generations. Then genetics is chaos theory, right? There are all these things that are directing our behavior that we don't really know, but most of it's happening below our awareness and without our permission. And
Which leads to a lot of fights.
Which leads to a lot of stupid things, right? We're incredibly brilliant in so many ways what we can do with our minds. And we're incredibly stupid much of the time, just bumbling around, automatically being reflexive and memory-based, sometimes 99% of the day. And so we're making errors continually with communication, with perception, with memory is terrible. We fight over these three things unnecessarily because we have to be right. But none of those things are correct. We're mostly misunderstanding each other most of the time. It's a fact.
And you may have one of these, but you're just inspiring the image in my brain of a pie chart. And there's this 1% teeny little slice that is where the partner gets to influence us. But otherwise, we're driven by our ancestral patterning, our memories, our nervous system, our fears, like all of this.
Particularly under stress. We do better when we're relaxed and feeling safe and secure, which is important because that is co-regulation. So my job with you, if you're my partner, is I have to watch you if you start to go south, if you start to become, by my view, the least bit unsafe in the moment, I no longer can influence you. That's a fact, right? With even just a little bit of corticosteroids in the brain, I don't care about your interests. And same with you. And that's how easy it is for us to get into fight or flight. This is a very acute system that operates without our permission, but we have to know it exists. Otherwise, we're going to do terrible things without tending to.
Yeah. May I reflect a quote from Wired for Love that addresses just this point, just to reinforce it? You said, in the context of couples, research in this area suggests how we as partners can manage one another's highs and lows. We don't have to remain at the mercy of each other's runaway moods and feelings. Rather, as competent managers of our partners, we can become expert at moving, shifting, motivating, influencing, soothing, and inspiring one another.
That's a two-person system.
Yeah. And that's so hopeful. It's so exciting, really.
It's hopeful, but here's the rub. The only way to really do this is I have to take care of myself and you at the same time, or you will confuse me as an adversary. And that is true. That's hard to maintain. That's hard to do, especially under stress for the reasons I said. And so if we're under stress, we will tend to revert to a one-person system of I, me, mine, and you. And there are all sorts of traps here that we will all fall into, me included, that we have to know about. Otherwise, again, we ruin our relationships. This is harder than people would like it to be because we're talking about doing the right thing when it's the hardest thing to do. That's what we're leveling up to, right? That means we're using a different executive that can put off gratification for something better, that can tolerate pain without acting it out, that can grieve losses and not be angry all the time, and that can tolerate differences. You're not me. You are not me. Therefore, I'm going to be disappointed, right? Because there are places we cannot meet. That's always going to be that way. It's impossible to be otherwise. And so we're talking about growing up and being an adult and dealing with the hard, cold facts of life. Disappointments, frustration, differences. People are a pain in the ass. So am I, right? But that's not the problem. The problem is threat. That if we're threatening, that's going to be a game ender. That's the problem. You can be annoying, but you can't be threatening. And it's very easy to be perceived as a threat.
Yeah, and that could be as simple as physical size. Men tend to be larger than women.
That's the thing with helplessness. Helplessness will always lead to aggression, which is why we have to be experts on each other. So I don't feel helpless. So I can handle you no matter what. There's nothing you could do that I wouldn't know what to do without using a stick or a whip. That's competence. But I have to know that's my job. And that's part of survival, by the way.
Yeah, and fawning only goes so far.
Say again?
Fawning only goes so far.
Fawning? All right. No, I have to know what to do when you're in the grips of something.
Yeah, you can't just try to appease. You have to, you need more tools than that. And most of us don't have the tools. So I'm very excited by what you're sharing.
Yeah, it reminds me of something you have said many times, Stan, which is that human relationships can survive fights, but they cannot survive, I think you said, the loss of safety and security.
If it sustains.
If it sustains.
Yes.
So couples need to protect each other.
Yes. At the very bottom, safety and security has to be locked down by design. Otherwise, without that, we can't enjoy anything, and it's going to erode any kind of good feeling because of safety first. And so first and foremost, we have to be a survival unit. It's you and me against the world. We are radically protective of each other because we can by agreement, and the alternative would not be good.
Right. And I believe you also said that fighting is actually necessary.
Not fighting per se, but disagreeing, conflict. Fighting connotes people being dysregulated, right? We want to avoid that by design, by predicting and planning for it. That you can eliminate systematically, reason for fighting, right? Coming up with policies and principles. Duh.
Duh.
But it doesn't occur to us. Oh, we argue about how to load the dishwasher. And then somebody asks, do you have a policy on it? No. Anyway, I digress. All these things that can solve tactically these issues, people don't think of because they are pointed in a different direction. They're not oriented towards teams. This is teamwork. This is a three-legged race. This is everything I do has to be by previous agreement with you and permission to enforce, or you will fight me. In a free and fair union, that's true, not a dictatorship.
Love demands democracy.
It demands equality and shared power and authority. Otherwise, watch out. Keep your eyes open tonight because people will not do well under those conditions.
I was thinking I actually have a lovely husband who sometimes appears threatening to me because he doesn't fight or he doesn't like to argue. Does that make sense for me?
Conflict avoid.
Conflict avoidant.
Very threatening.
So I can at times perceive that as threatening.
It is. It is. It's a good strategy. It's learned in infancy and childhood. That's a good strategy. Then it's terrible for adults because it is threatening. You can't engage, can't solve problems. You can't know what's going on. You can't do anything. And the person who's doing it is doing it automatically because that's how they adapted to neglect. Usually it's neglect that breeds things like conflict avoidance in early childhood. When you study babies, you see this starting right away. All the adaptation to attachment values or lack of attachment values early, as you see it changed right now. Before they can remember this, people can. And then, of course, it repeats because it's the same person's caregiving. So these things are quite embedded in the body. They're reflexive, but they're changeable. They are plastic.
Yeah, I poke.
Which is why secure functioning is necessary, because without secure functioning, which is simply a group of social contracts between people, there isn't enough safety and security for development to move forward. So you cannot become more secure in those relationships because the system starts to react to itself. And so they're locked in, compelled to react the same way that they expect the other person, or the other person expects them to react. And therein lies, again, these loops that human beings get into.
That makes a lot of sense. You just mentioned secure functioning. And that brings me to the question of how does that work with non-monogamy? Is there a specific way of going about secure functioning when you're exploring polyamory?
Consensual non-monogamy. The consensual. So the way this works out is we're herd animals that tend to pair bond, but not all of us do, right? Polyamory groups, cultures, they do not necessarily do that, but they still have to design that relationship in terms of governance. Who's at the top? Who decides? Free flow of information has got to be there at the top of the principles. Otherwise, that takes that relationship or those relationships down. So they still have to know what they're doing. They have to know who's in charge, hopefully all of them. Everything is fully transparent and people are doing things with permission ahead of time. And they have enforceable rules. Otherwise, they won't work. It doesn't matter whether it's a tiny system like a dyadic system or a larger system as a group or a country for that matter. It's harder and harder with larger groups, which is why you absolutely need to have shared purpose and vision all the time. Otherwise, people will start to pick at each other and they will fight. And so only a shared purpose. We're working on this is what we're doing. And this is because we want to win. We want to make money. We want to survive. We want to succeed. Whatever it is, that flattens differences. And that's what keeps us in line and focused, whether it's a rock and roll band or it's a dance troupe or it's an Olympic team or it's a cop car partners or the military or a business. Always it's that way. Otherwise, people will either leave because there's nothing in it for them, or they will feel maltreated because the balance of power is wrong, or they're not going to get what they want. And so shared purpose and shared vision is always a necessity with human beings when they're together. Otherwise, they fragment. What's happening in our country currently, without a stated purpose and a shared vision for all people, will begin to tribalize. And that's when civil war happens, right? It's a failure in leadership of having a message that all people can buy into. Of course, the message here in the United States, well-meaning, is actually false, right? All people are not equal, according to the real thing. Not as stated, that we do otherize, and there are people who are tortured, literally, by being outcasts, outsiders. I'm talking about people of color, women, the greatest, longtime group of subordinates to white males. This has been going on forever. And so as long as that exists in reality, there will be problems. Because in truth, there is not equality there. That's why we're starting with this small unit. There can be and should be.
Yeah.
Larger groups, it gets harder and harder. However, changing the present and the future is what is actually all we can do. What's done is done. But to learn from the past and to change the future is the key here. And that's what people do not do. That's what we can do, and we don't do it. That's the only thing you can do with memory, that terrible memory, is to change the present and the future. And then in terms of neuropathways, those neuropathways get relegated to dirt roads. They're still there, but they're no longer being animated by cues, threat cues. That's the only thing we can do. And yet that is the most important thing with couples, with all of us. What are we going to do next?
Yeah. And it seems that with the chaos that you referenced in our societies right now, and it's happening all over the world, there's chaos everywhere. It seems that the invitation to create the structure within a coupledom, within a familydom is like when you mentioned that earlier, my body had a response to that. My whole somatic reflection was like, move toward, I want that. So if I may ask a very practical question, you've got 8 or 9 books out there. If a couple is listening, they want to look into creating this agreement They want to create some structure. They want to put some rules in place for their marriage. Which of your books would you recommend that they turn to? Which is there any that spell it out clearly?
All of them. I'd say the last book, In Each Other's Care, is almost solely about that. It's a collection of common couple complaints we've seen in my clinic. But it's basically using the same formula in terms of what went wrong and what to do about it. And so that book really does that. It just doesn't have the science in it in terms of attachment and arousal regulation. It assumes people have read those books.
Great. They're all in the show notes. So I just invite anybody listening, go on to Amazon, check out the descriptions and pick which speaks to you. We're taking a brief pause to share what's on offer in the Compassionate Inquiry community. Stay with us. We'll be right back. If you're interested in experiencing Gabor Mate's trauma healing approach, consider working with a certified compassionate inquiry practitioner. Access healing support for mental, emotional, and physical symptoms, unresolved trauma, relationship issues, addictions, and more. Use the link in the show notes to access our global directory of certified professionals. In addition to their years of CI training and regular certification reviews, our practitioners bring the depth of their own personal lived experiences and skills in additional complementary therapeutic approaches. Use the link in the show notes to access our global directory of certified professionals.
Can I say one thing? There is no way that we're going to change the world. It's never going to happen. What we can is change our world, and that is our family, our community, our friends. That is within our control, at least to the degree that it could be, right? Because it is a process. But that is where we can be safe. That is where we can be with like-minded people, as long as it's not otherizing again. That's what we can control. And if we can, we should.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we use a romantic metaphor, Rose can redesign the raft to make room for Jack so that he doesn't have to sacrifice himself. They can be saved together.
Damn. Oh.
Yeah, that always seemed wrong. Very romantic, but wrong.
Can you just get in there with you? It's not going to sink. And if it does, we'll go from there.
Yeah, then it's shared. It's exactly. Leila, do you have more questions for Stan?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly ask you, Stan, about the relationship between self-regulation and co-regulation. In compassion inquiry, we talk a lot about self-regulation. In RLT as well, we each take accountability and we are each responsible for our own triggers. You talk a lot about co-regulation.
I'm not in agreement with that.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask you. How do you see that relationship between self-regulation and co-regulation?
We, by nature, co-regulate in close distances, right? Eye to eye, face to face, and skin to skin. It starts early, it starts in infancy. When we do that and we're operating in that way, we're regulating each other's systems. Why? Because we're wired for that. I can see what's going on in you before you know it. You can see what's going on in me before I know it. Therefore, it is much more efficient for me to know how to regulate, downregulate, upregulate you and you, me, than it is for me to work on myself in real time, because that's not as fast or efficient and my eye is off the ball. So you could be only so good at self-regulation, but in our relationship, you're fine because maybe I'm the master regulator. Who cares? It works systemically, right?
And so how does that work, Stan, in today's world when I can speak for myself and arguments with my husband, which often can start off via the WhatsApp world of technology?
Yes.
I'm sure you've seen that a lot in the couples you work with. A lot of arguments start off where you don't actually see each other or whilst driving the car.
Did a TED talk on this. Never get into emotional conversations when driving because you will fight. It's a setup. We're legally blind here, and the amygdala fires more often if faced at a glance aside. And plus, one of us is using resources. It can't work. It never could. So pull over. Anyway, go on.
No, I was just thinking about technology and how we often have discussions over text or WhatsApp where we can't actually see each other.
We're visual animals. We error correct through the visual field. Our error rate goes up without the visual field in close up, right? Not distance. We can't see as well at a distance. We have to be relatively close to read each other's pupil and face, which we do automatically. We don't have to think about it. unless we have a problem in that area. And so co-regulation is a natural process of attunement, misattunement, right? It's happening very quickly without our noticing. Only when we stay misattuned for longer than a few beats do we start to get threatened. Right? And usually we're good at recovering together. So this is a two-person job, right? I can't handle my triggers when I'm triggered. You're in the best position to return me to safety. If I could, I would. I can't. Therefore, you're the one who's up. And if you can't do it and you're triggered, then it's my turn. So at any point, either of us could have done something to shift that trajectory and didn't. Better luck next time, because that you can actually practice. You can actually predict and plan for the next time. And so all of this is doable. You just have to know what you're up against and what must be done, but it requires effort and time. Sorry.
I was just thinking, what if both are really triggered, which happens often at the same time?
There's a plan for that too.
I knew it.
And that's best done in session where we get people into those situations. All we have to do is mildly activate them because it's a memory state issue, right? They have to be in the state of mind that they'll be in when they go live in order to remember it. It is not very hard to do, and we have to practice it over and over again. You can call it a difficult partner exercise. You're going to make your partner as difficult as they can possibly be for you. And you're going to practice with my help on how you're going to deal with them, protect yourself without harming them at the same time. That can be done. It has to be thought ahead. You can't wait to go live. When you go live, you're going to do exactly what you always do. Just like performers. If they didn't practice for the live situation on stage, they're not going to do well. They have to practice that over and over again because they're going to be under conditions that they are not usually under. And so they have to be replicated in some way. Same with us. Same with us. When we go live, we're animals. We go right back to what we automatically do. That's why you have to think ahead. Predict what could go wrong based on what has, and then what could go wrong based on what hasn't, but could. We do that all, Tracy and I do that all the time. And I guarantee you that by design, our relationship is not only safe and secure at all times, every now and then it slips with repair. And we're happy in the relationship by design. And we do things, we predict, plan, and prepare before we walk in any room. And you can be sure that our time is preserved. Other people's mileage may vary, but we basically handle everything together as a team. And that's what makes us powerful. We work together. Two can do much more than one, but only if they collaborate and cooperate with each other. Otherwise, they're not better. They're going to die sooner because of interpersonal stress. So all of this is about, three-legged race, moving together or we don't move. That is how teams are played. That is how this is played. And not everyone wants to do that. And I say good luck to them.
That's a beautiful metaphor. A three-legged race. Anybody who's tried to run one and you're not in sync with your partner, boom, you're down with that first, second step. Yeah.
It's not a solo sport. It's a team sport.
And we plan as humans. We plan vacations. We plan family gatherings. We plan so many things. We have the skills.
It's so amazing that we don't do it, and it changes everything, folks. Just remember Pepper. Big P, big two Ps, big R, right? Predict what could go wrong, plan for it, come up with a war room strategy, right? If something happens we could have predicted, we have a plan for that too. All right, we're going to meet in the bathroom. Nobody knows, right? And prepare just before you walk in. Never rely on memory. Memory sucks. Remember, when we walk in that room, stick by me. If this happens, if I get cornered by drunk Uncle Bob, to come get me. And we're going to work together. Nobody needs to know. Nobody needs to know. It's theater. But we're going to do this, and we're awesome. I can't tell you how many times we've done this with our daughter and managed to control the seating arrangement at a Thanksgiving dinner to avoid a person we adore, but not when they're drunk. And we managed to do it without anyone knowing.
I'm just feeling such a pull towards that. The collaboration, the camaraderie. It's fun. It is. And it's like you guys know what's going on and you've got a plan and nobody else knows. It's so cool.
It's like the couple bubble. Is that what you're talking about, Stan, when you talk about the couple bubble?
The couple bubble is the safety and security system and the co-regulation system. that we're responsible to each other, first and foremost. That if we are not happy and we're not safe and secure, nothing else, nobody else will fare well. Our kids, definitely not. Our work, our health, definitely not. Other people we're around, we'd rather be with people that get along. Everything and everyone depends on us working well together. And if you frame it that way, then you can see yourselves as something greater. We too, both of us, are in charge of everyone and everything, because everyone and everything is affected by our state of mind and how well we work together, period. That gives us a shared purpose.
Definitely. We're coming to the end of our time together. Sadly, this has been so much fun.
What else is there to talk about? But
Is that you're actually giving me hope. It was funny. I was doing some official business and I was asked my status and I said divorced and they said only once. And it's like, once was enough. Not like, how many do you need? Messing up in a marriage once is plenty for me.
Zsa Zsa Gabor, 12, 13, Mickey Rooney, 12, 13.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But the next time I want to get it right. So you've inspired me. Is there anything that I haven't asked you or that Leila hasn't asked you that you'd like to put out there for our audience?
And just to say that both Leila and I are really in the field of prevention. This is why I went into this, because I studied babies and I wanted to actually work with mother-infant pairs and they wouldn't come in. And the next best thing is working with the couple, because change the couple, you change the kids, you change the trajectory. So we're really in prevention, but also we are changing that small world, because a couple work should be training, should be coaching, should be prevention work, because all we've got is protecting their future. Even though they're mired in the past isn't where it's at. Only the future matters.
I think you've just given us the pearls of wisdom for our audience.
Now I have to live by them. Oh, God.
We typically ask at this point in the podcast if there are a few words you'd like to leave for people to contemplate. You've shared so much already today. I'm just wondering, is there anything that you'd like to wrap up with?
Yeah. Science calms me. So does history. Fact, most of us are not doing anything purposely. And most of what happens in relationship isn't personal. It feels personal. It isn't. And I could prove that just by using video playback. And so cut each other a break here, that we are being pushed around by nature and by our own nature. And we're mostly misunderstanding each other. And that's all of us, me included. And so design the thing, build it. Do not just rest on your laurels. It's crazy to do that. Crazy. You would never do anything like that in the other world, right? It matters to everyone, and especially the two of you, that from the ground up, you build this thing and you constantly lock things down as you run across problems.
Very well said. Thank you. Leila Bahri-Lucas, thank you so much for being with us today. Dr. Stan Tatkin, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Gifts of Trauma is a weekly podcast that features personal stories of trauma healing, transformation, and the gifts revealed on the path to authenticity. Listen on Apple, Spotify, all podcast platforms. Rate, review, and share it with your clients, colleagues, and family. Subscribe and you won't miss an episode. Please note, this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for personal therapy or a DIY formula for self-therapy.